Okay, probably we could start. Yes, I really see. I'm really glad to see all of you and distinguished speakers and presenters and our now the participants, which now is 51 participants here in our Zoom session. I'm especially glad to see all of you for our second day, our training, online training for practitioners and policymakers and specialists. And okay, in the comments, we read yesterday that for some people the video slows if they turn off the camera. But maybe we could instill the practice of turning on the camera at the beginning of each day, and then we come back after the break just for a few minutes until the speakers starts the presentation. So it's good, especially it's pleasure for our speakers. So it's easy to present any materials, any data if we, for example, only if beginning the course we can see the face who is who the participants and for whom speakers could present their presentation and materials. Yes, I think it's okay, it's good, and now I see that most of all participants turn on the camera. It may be only until they start the first presentation. Thank you very much for these actions. Yes, and of course, it's if we can see our faces, and we also start building up the sense of our community specialists, community friends, maybe, why not? We're also very interested to have your questions or comments, as your expertise can be very enriched for us. Before we start, I will briefly remind you of the online protocol. And now I think we will just show the protocol, online protocol, as a slide 4, please. Yes. And also it's important to do this, so it's okay, it will be okay, and also for participants and speakers. Yeah, it is very easy rules to switch off the microphone and etc. You can see it now. Those who haven't done already so, could you please turn on your camera now, and also we can go on. And while you turn on it, I will show the program for the today's session, and I'm not going to read it at all, but it's on the screen, and you can see it plan your day. Yes, now we have this the standard our schedule. It's the first session with Roberto Boscoli and Chiara Cagnazzo, and also the panel session and the little bit break, and then we have the final session. Okay, and now I'm with also a special pleasure for me. I would like to present our today's speakers as Roberto Boscolo, lead of Climate and Energy Climate Finance, WMO organization, and Chiara Cagnazzo. As you know, the Roberto Boscolo was presented as the first day of our training, and now I will give some little bit words about the Chiara Cagnazzo. Chiara is the sectoral information system manager of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, where she addressed the challenge of transforming user needs into different sectors into usable climate delivered information to help with informed decision-making related to climate variations at different timescales. Before joining Copernicus Climate Change Services, as a scientist, she was as a researcher at the National Research Center in Italy. She was dedicated to understanding the role of atmospheric variability and its representation in models on climate predictability at time scale from subseasonal or decadal, as well as long-term climate projections. Of course, and I need to mention that participants, you please take the opportunity to receive the feedback from our two experts, and don't forget to write your questions or comments in the chat during the presentation of our distinguished speakers. Is also which is supported by English and Russian speaking team. You can write it in English or Russian. Be sure we will be passing your questions to them. Okay, and now, please, dear Roberta, dear Chiara, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Alexei, and good morning, everyone. I hope you find our talk interesting. A group of us has been trying to contribute to capacity building in different regions of the globe as weather and climate services are becoming more and more relevant, as you all heard yesterday, on Monday. So there is also a need of collaboration and interconnection amongst people providing the services. Our aim with this course is to contribute to develop similar standards and know-how for all regions to assist and promote such collaboration. So my presentation is up. I don't see it. Okay, this is the second slide, but it's okay. I just want to say, could you go back, please? I just want to say that myself and Chiara today would like to thank Hamid Bastani for his great support in preparing this lecture. And so this second slide is the learning objective of this lecture. And as now with this slide, I would like to introduce WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, just a little bit to introduce where I work. And WMO is a United Nations specialized agency with 193 member states and territories, and is the authoritative voice of the United Nations for weather, water, and climate. As weather and climate and water cycle have no national boundaries, the international cooperation at the global scale is essential for the development of meteorology and operational hydrology. And WMO provides this framework for such international cooperation. We work with the worldwide Met services where they collect and provide vital weather, climate, and water related information for their nation. And we know that the early warning, severe weather and air quality, as well as climate variability and change, allow decision makers, community, and individuals to be better prepared for weather, climate, and water-related extremes. And in turn, WMO support these national Met services with this work and helps them to meet their international commitments in the area of disaster risk reduction, climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and sustainable development. Also, WMO collaborates with other United Nations agencies and with the National Meteorological Services to support the implementation of several environmental conventions like the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and the Montreal Protocol for Ozone, and many others. Next slide, please. The World Meteorological Organization held a World Climate Conference in 2009, and it was focused on empowering decision makers with appropriate climate information to meet society's climate-related challenges. And the conference called for the establishment of the global framework for climate services to enable better management of the risk of climate variability and change, as well as climate adaptation and mitigation. And through the development and incorporation of science-based climate information and prediction into planning, policy, and practice. So why I'm mentioning the global framework for climate services? Because this is the first time that the global community agreed on the importance of to close the gap between the work of climate science and the need of decision maker facing climate variability and climate change. And this was also the first example that we wanted to go against, say, the traditional supply-driven approach that focus on the technical advances of climate science. But instead, we wanted to put an emphasis on the fact that the research agenda and information produced through the climate services has to be demand or user driven, meeting the user context specific need and accounting for their technical capacity. So the key challenges that was recognized at the time was there was certainly an inadequate availability and quality of climate data in many parts of the world. There was the need to create and improve access to climate services by potential users in almost all countries. And also there was a kind of a limited climate literacy and capacity to deal with climate-related risks in many countries and also in many climate-sensitive sectors. And so this was, say, the main gaps that was found and the main challenges that was found and at the global level, and we wanted to address it with the global framework for climate services. And because these climate services has to be user-driven, the global framework for climate services defined an initial 5 sectors or priorities for developing these climate services. And you can see the priority there is for agriculture and food security, disaster risk reduction, health, water resources, and energy. So in a formal way, the global framework for climate services recognize also that it was imperative for the implementation to build partnerships involving all stakeholders in the climate services development. And such partnership is was considered for co-development and co-delivering of climate services, and created a market for organization investing and using the services. So the Global Framework for Climate Services established also a partner advisory committee that consists currently of 22 international organizations, including the FAO, the UNESCO, the World Bank, the European Commission, and many others. Next slide, please. So there are 5 foundational pillars of the climate services according to the Global Framework for Climate Services. And so there is the users interface platform, which provides a structured means for climate services users and users representative, as well as a researcher and service provider to interact in order to ensure that the climate and other contextual information which are relevant to users' needs are included in the climate services development. And then there is the climate services information system, which is the principal mechanism through which information about climate, past, present, and future is collected, stored, and processed. And the climate services information system enhance, say, the capacity of national and regional center to effectively use global and regional input to generate products and services that inform climate decision-making across a wide range of climate-sensitive sector. Top level function of the function of the CSIS are this climate data management, climate monitoring, climate prediction, and climate projection. And you will have more information about this in the next lectures. Then we have observation and monitoring, which is a pillar that ensures that the climate observation and the other data that are necessary to meet the needs of the users are collected, managed, and disseminated. Research, modeling, and prediction is also a very important pillar to continually improve the scientific understanding and predictability of the climate system at all timescales, the quality of the climate information through the modeling, and tools that are that address the gaps and prediction and data analysis. There are several organizations that say are key to this objective, to this pillar, like the World Climate Research Program. And finally, a pillar that really encompasses them all is the capacity development, which is a process for strengthening the ability of or capacity of the individuals, the organization, and the society to solve the problem and meet their sustainable development objectives. Next slide, please. So after, as I said, the Global Framework for Climate Services was launched more than 10 years ago. And so now what is this program is summarized in this slide. There are building blocks that are already in place and that in combination can provide a framework for a new and next phase of the Global Framework for Climate Services implementation. And the elements shown in this slide are intended to inject in this program, in this new, say, program, really to support the international climate action worldwide. Any of these blocks in this diagram can serve as an entry point for partnership creating and support, and in promoting continuous rising level of climate services implementation capacity. The characteristics of this, say, new phase of the Global Framework for Climate Services include a focus not only in what should be implemented, as well described before, but also a focus on how. And then we want to see that this is not really a linear fixed term duration of the implementation, but it is an interactive and continuous tracking of progress and increasing ambition. And then another thing, important aspect is to see that there are not separate standalone initiatives, but the implementation is aligned with and supporting of many international climate policy framework and financial mechanism. Next slide, please. So there are some mechanisms already in place that enable the implementation of GFCS. At the regional scale, there is WMO brings together climate experts, services providers like the Met Services and the regional institution and other institution in something that is called a Regional Climate Outlook Forum. That are there, they started actually in 1990s, and they produce consolidated regional climate outlooks based on climate prediction with experts assessment in several different regions of the world. And you can see that there are these archives, these meetings are really mapped and covering almost the whole world. These processes of the Regional Climate Outlook Forums includes meeting of regional and international climate experts to develop a consensus-based regional climate outlook forum outlook for the coming season. Then there is an interactive section involving climate scientists and representatives from the user sector for the identification of the impacts. And also formulation of the responses. There are also training workshops associated with these archives on the seasonal climate prediction to strengthen the capacity of the national and regional operational climate experts. And the special outreach session where media, exponents of the media are invited to these meetings to also co-develop the messages and the communication strategies. And the other element, very important, that is in place is the National Framework for Climate Services, which provide an effective way to establish institutional mechanism to coordinate, facilitate, and strengthen the collaboration among the national institution and other key stakeholders to improve the production, the tailoring, and the communication and the delivery of the climate services. Also, the National Framework for Climate Services includes assessing the baseline on climate services capacity, and also identify the key stakeholders at the national level, like developers, providers, investors, users, and also the services. They organize the national consultation workshop to bring together all the stakeholders, identifying the gaps and the key elements. So also develop and endorse a national strategic plan, and also to develop kind of a national action plan for climate services. Next slide, please. And also another element of the GFCS is WMO has put in place a way to assess the capacity for providing climate services for our members. And also the capacity to document the associated socioeconomic outcomes and benefit. And this is done through a checklist that many of the national Met Services receive and are invited to fill. We already received something like 150 out of 193 checklist responses from our WMO members countries, and the results are published annually in a report which is called the Status of the Climate Services, The first one was published in 2019, and it was focusing on agriculture and food security. The second was published in 2020. It was focusing on early warning system. Last year, the report was launched at COP in Glasgow, and it was focusing on water resources. And I'm glad to say that the next one, and the one that we are working to launch at the COP in 2022 in Egypt, will be focusing on energy. I also invite everybody here to download these documents. They are on the WMO website. Next one. Also under the umbrella of the GFCS, many partners which were involved, that also are involved in this training activity, put together an energy exemplar, which is a guideline on how to build climate services specifically for the energy sector. And the guideline, at least the first one, which was published in 2017, focused on 5 main energy industry phases, which is the identification and resource assessment, the impact assessment, the site selection and financing, and operation and maintenance. And we are now working on a new, so this document, the energy exemplar, you can also download it from the WMO website. But also I want to introduce, I want to say that we have a new publication, which is not ready yet, but will be launched in few months, and which is building on the previous publication on the energy example, and the title is Integrated Weather and Climate Services for Net Zero Energy Transition. And it aims to integrate, to look at all time scales, really, from weather to climate, and also including water services, and to help to the countries to support their and accelerate their net zero energy transition through the incorporation of science-based services for energy. Next one. This is just a preview of the publication, where we provide an updated framework for the weather and climate services value chain, building on the framework of the GFCS. And this framework combines elements of the co-production approaches, which is really understanding the user need and solutions. So understanding the context, building partnership and a common ground to co-explore needs and solution. Then there is the information production through the observation, modeling, forecasting, data management and sharing, service design and delivery, which includes the co-design and the co-delivery of the services, user decisions and action, where the users utilize the information provided by the services and take decisions, so support the decision-making process. The operationalization of the services, which is important to make these services in a routine way, and also the evaluation of the services, which is another important element, where to set benchmark and key performance indicator to ensure that the services are effective and successful. Next one. And this is just the last one before passing to Chiara. And I just would like to mention that there is a the new project of the European Commission that has been funded and will address 2 main challenges of the climate services. The first one is to support the climate services development through a better identification of the actors that play a role in the climate services and in the market, And the second is to develop methods and criteria that favor the quality assessment of the different components of the climate services to ensure that these are trustworthy. And this is a project that we start in May this year, and will address, will be developing some activities like engage and support the climate services community, taking stock of what has been developed so far, and also formulate a recommendation to standardize the service practice. And this is all for me at the moment. Over to you, Chiara, for your part.
Thank you very much, Roberta, and thank you, Alexei, for the nice introduction at the beginning of this talk. If you can go to the next slide, please. As Roberta was saying, key aspects of the climate service value chain are the co-design and the co-production. And this slide, this quite busy slide here, is a nice summary that came out from the European EUPORIAS FP7 project that developed a set of climate service prototypes with a user component, of course, always present. And somehow a set of reflections and lessons learned were drawn, and some of them are nicely summarized in this slide. For example, if you look at the top left, the being mindful of the limits, this concept relates to the broadness of a service and how downstream the service should go. So a very deep and narrow service addresses the needs of a specific user. On the other hand, the services that address a variety of users are more likely to attract a wider attention, and so somehow facilitating the long-term sustainability. So this is why a clear identification of real users and possible users is crucial, together with their motivation. So if you think, for example, as an example, the Copernicus Climate Change Service of the European Commission. So the Copernicus Climate Change Service is one of the thematic services of the Copernicus program. So the approach within this service is to stay quite broad in the products and to offer and guarantee a kind of a long-term sustainability, but also to present kind of examples where this broad information is then tailored down to address specific user needs. So those examples are very important and very useful to enhance the uptake of users downstream of the Copernicus Climate Change Service. Another crucial aspect among the lessons learned that is immediately below is related to being clear since the beginning of the engagement phase with the users in order to have a common understanding of what is in the scope and what not. Another very crucial point is the trust and confidentiality. So this means to develop an environment of mutual trust between the users and the providers. And that's a quite delicate action, because you may think that sharing kind of company-specific details and practices is quite challenging in a commercial environment, in any competitive environment. And this is impossible if there is no trust between the parties that are involved in the development of a service. And you may also think of the fact that organizations are really interested in managing not only the financial risk, but also the reputational risk. So if you are thinking, for example, of developing a tool that goes from the climate information and the climate forecast, for example, into the forecast of the impact for a specific organization, where the impact has been, of course, co-defined together, so a public release of the forecast of the impact may be quite sensitive information. Or maybe another key aspect that is in this slide is related to the flexibility. So this means being able to redefine the scope of the service after you collect users' feedback. And this implies having a kind of an agile approach in the implementation. For example, you may think that you would like to start with the idea of building a service based on seasonal forecast, but then it may end up that the really needed information is like more of a weather forecast 2 weeks ahead. So what does this mean in practice? That during the development of the service, you may need to change the data, to change the expertise, to change the licenses, to change the teams that is involved in delivering the services. So this is the concept of flexibility. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here, I would like to focus on two key points that are taken from the previous slides, and they are interconnected. So the first one is having clear who the users are. And somehow the energy sector does not consist of an homogeneous group of people, but you think of a variety of professional profiles, a variety of economic interests and activities. And this kind of diversity is found not only across stakeholders, but also within a single organization, where maybe each department performs different activities and may have different short-term objectives, different priorities. So many users' profiles require different types of information. So, for example, different regional and temporal scales. And there is really no feasible way to satisfy all those needs in this kind of a complex landscape within a uniform approach. So if your service is addressing a too broad set of users, there's the risk that, for example, if you plan to develop a tool within this context, these tools become something that is nice to have, interesting to have, but it will never become a real decision supporting tool. So only when the decision-making processes are really well described, a climate service can start to define which information is needed and how it should be provided to support and improve a real decision-making. And the second connected point in the slide that is this journey together, in practice, the service should provide an added value to the user, but also to the provider. So each actor involved in the service, for them, it should be clear which are their expectations. And what does this mean in practice? Next slide, please. Yeah, so here are represented the pillars, let's say, of a climate service. So you go from the data on the left-hand side to the user and the decision-making on the right-hand side through different steps and different involved actors. So on the left-hand side, you have the data, and the data, of course, are the domain of the climate research. So then you need that the data become a source of information and knowledge. And that is the next step. So this means defining tailored outputs and quality assessments. And those need to involve, of course, the climate scientists, but also the service providers who have engaged with the users. So what is important here is that this is not only a one-way direction, but it is important that this assessment of the quality and the tailored information then feed back to the production itself of the data. And then the real generation of the service is done by the service provider that interact with their users in a co-creation and, for example, defining a decision-making tool. So even those steps are not a one-way direction. So somehow this slide is to summarize two key concepts. The first one is that the change should operate in a way that not only information quality is demonstrated, but user requirements are adequately addressed and their value should be illustrated. And the second point is that this leaves room for quite, I would say, an exciting transdisciplinary research, but also they should not preclude basic research too. Next slide, please. So, the complexity of a climate service that address specific set of sector needs is that they are based on a variety of data, a diversity of data and a large volume of data. And here we are talking about data of different nature. For example, in the slide, satellite, in situ, rescue data, reanalysis, model predictions at different timescales, model projections. So we are talking about data that cover a range of space and time. Those are data that come from different communities that have been generated for different communities, even with different standards. And standards is a key word that also Roberta was presenting before. And different expertise are required to correctly use and manage those typology of data. So first problem, see, if you have a service and the solution the service would like to address need multiple sources of data. And the second problem is that those data should not only be accessible, they should be maintained, they should be supported, they should be documented, fully managed from a data governance point of view, quality assessed. And this is, for example, what an operational service like the Copernicus Climate Change Service does. Next slide, please. So these numbers are coming from, again, the Copernicus Climate Change Service and its data management. So the service offers a variety of data in an operational way. So as I was saying, maintained, documented, accessible within the infrastructure in a uniform way, follow international standards. And what is important here is that the feedback from, in this case, more than 100,000 users, active users in our infrastructure, are continuously collected, are continuously addressed, and so the service becomes quite flexible in this respect. And another key aspect here is that the data are completely free, open access, and quality control. That's another important point. Next slide, please. Now we will go to a kind of a few details of what the topology of data and the philosophy behind you can find in such a service. So this slide focuses on one specific set of products that are the essential climate variables. Those are, of course, all available in the platform I was mentioning. So the essential climate variable is a physical, chemical, biological variable or group of variables linked together that are used to characterize the Earth's climate. And the GCOS, the Global Climate Observing System, currently specifies 55 essential climate variables. You find on the platform of the Copernicus Climate Change Service 22 essential climate variables, and we plan to offer more, reaching ideally 35 essential climate variables freely available through the service, covering land, ocean, and atmosphere. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, while the next slide comes, or maybe it's just me who cannot see it, this next slide focuses on another typology of data products that are available, thank you very much, through this interface, to this platform. And those are seasonal predictions that are available as data, but also as graphical products. So the seasonal forecasts provide information about the next few months, those kind of long-term averages. And within the Copernicus Climate Change Service, you can see and have access to a multimodal system of seasonal forecasts coming from 8 different models. So just to give you an idea, if the weather forecasts give you information about the single weather phenomena, the seasonal forecast is stated more in terms of probability. So the probability of being above or below typical climate conditions based on the past years and for the next few months. So in this slide, you can see a snapshot of the typology of products you can find. So you can find raw data, but you can also find kind of graphical products showing you information based on seasonal forecast. As an example, on the top left, you may see the seasonal forecast of the El Niño based on the sea surface temperature in the Pacific area. And this shows in blue point the time series of the anomaly of the sea surface temperature over the next few months, over the past months. And in red, you can find from the different models the forecast of the evolution of this anomaly. In this case, we are showing that the climate is in its currently La Niña phase, with a high probability in the next few months to go back to kind of neutral conditions. What is important here is that those data are really global. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, while it arrives, I'm focusing on the information that is given on the longer term. So longer term ahead, of course, it is not possible to give a precise prediction of how weather and climate will change years into the future. And the climate projections provide kind of range of spread of the possible future climate in response to specific forcing. And in this case, is the greenhouse gas emissions, concentrations, and aerosols. So those are produced by climate models. There are many models, and they are available in groups and in ensemble of realizations. And at the Copernicus Climate Change Service, you can find freely access to the global climate projections based on this CMIP6, the new protocol covering different scenarios and years ahead. But also climate projections at the regional scale, covering many different regions, not only the European region. Next slide, please. This slide focuses on another very important set of products that are among the most used And those are the Reanalysis. The Reanalysis is a data set that combines model data with observations from across the world, and it gives you, if global, a globally complete and consistent data set using the laws of physics. So in practice, they reconstructed the meteorological conditions and the climate condition of the past with no gaps in space and time for a number of atmospheric, land, waves variables. And here, I think among the most used and most popular reanalysis data set, we have the global ERA 5 reanalysis data that cover the past period from 1950 until today in almost near real time, with 5 days behind real time, with kind of a resolution of 30 kilometers in horizontal, hourly resolution in time. And somehow we are now preparing for the next phase of the global reanalysis that will be a coupled atmosphere-ocean set of reanalysis. But together with global reanalysis, we give access also to regional reanalysis. And here, this is just a snapshot of the examples that will be available and are becoming available now at the Copernicus Climate Change Service. And my next slide is the last one. And somehow is an example of how a climate service may make use of those typology of data. And this is an example that has been built for the energy sector, and this relates to the Copernicus Climate Change Service Energy Service. It has been developed by WEMC and C3S in collaboration, and it has really been designed to address the needs of the users who need to assess the impact of climate variability and climate change on energy operations, management and planning, but also the needs of a kind of a community of energy modelers that need kind of friendly data set information to be used in their power assessment studies. The service today covers the European area, but in the plans we are extending it at a global scale. It covers data, as I was mentioning from the past, reanalysis, the seasonal forecast product, but also the climate projections in a kind of a seamless approach. And that's quite complex because from the user perspective, this is quite transparent and seamless, but you may imagine the diversity of the information that's behind. So let's say several meteorological and energy variables are available. And together with this kind of service, also there are examples and then case studies where at the Copernicus Climate Change Service, we show how organizations and companies work with this typology of data to address the needs of specific set of users. For example, we have examples dedicated to users who need to operate a wind park and how the accuracy in the information of the wind may have an immediate translation in economic benefits. And I will leave the floor to Roberta to complement this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara. So I just want to finish, and I tried to be very quick here because maybe we want to leave some time for questions. But I'm just providing some example from how we build also climate services in other parts of the world, looking at what Chiara just presented now with the data from Copernicus, and how these are sources for information for energy sector in other part of the world. Please, next slide, just quickly. WMO is involved in a project called ENANDES, Enhancing Adaptive Capacity of the Andean Communities through Climate Services. This is a project funded by the Adaptation Fund, started in February 2021, working with Colombia, Chile, Peru, and each country are defining their energy challenges at the moment, and we are supporting the services that will meet these challenges. For example, Colombia wants to diversify the energy production, which is heavily dependent by hydropower. Chile is looking to assessing the renewable potential and making resilience their existing infrastructure. And Peru is assessing their national hydropower potential for future new hydropower installation. Next one is another example. Next slide, please. It's another example of a project called Focus Africa. which stands for Full Value Chain Optimized Climate User-Centric Services for Southern Africa. This is a project funded by Horizon 2020 by the European Commission. And next slide, please. We have a case study located in Tanzania, where the hydropower is currently the largest source of renewable energy, but the country also has a high dependence of biomass, which lead to deforestation, which is also against, say, climate change, and other energy sources like fossil fuel, natural gas, and coal. So there is a really important need to start to have a massive production of energy coming from renewable energy, to stop deforestation, and also to mitigate the emission from fossil fuel. Our users here is TANESCO, which is the main energy company in Tanzania. And next one is another, next slide, please, is another example of Focus Africa in Malawi. The country also heavily relies in hydropower to support the country energy demand. And but also there is a problem here that the electricity is accessible only to 11% of the population. So the government wants to increase the energy generation by building a new hydropower to increase the generation and also serve 80% of the population. And the user here is EDF, which is a company, Électricité de France, has been selected to submit an offer for the development of this new hydropower. And the next one, just to say how important is that, next slide, please, how important is to once we have the services done and once the user start to use these services for their decision making, it's important to assess the socioeconomic benefit of these climate services. And this is also very important just to justify the development of this new branch of the meteorology. And Focus Africa, the project, is developing an approach which is a combination of qualitative and quantitative analysis, which is based on these 8 principles: relevancy, common language, coherency, transparent and open dialogue, pragmatic, which is a little bit of what already Chiara presented initially, when you have to really establish a trust with the user, and it has to be based on an open dialogue and a transparency. Next one. This is my last one, and it's just an example of how this socioeconomic benefit analysis methodology is applied here in Tanzania, looking at some indicators like the inclusive economic growth, food, water, energy nexus, governance and innovation, and climate change and disaster resilience. I think I finish here. And the next one is probably a summary of our presentation today, what you learned from us, from Chiara and myself. And we are now available for a few questions, if you have, on what we presented. Thank you very much to the organizer, and also thank you very much, Chiara, for this tandem presentation.
Yes, really, thank you very much for this amazing general presentation, both of you. Thank you. Thank you. It was really interesting and really practical advices and instruments and mechanisms to realization, to understanding the better the climate and better services. Thank you very much. And yes, please, the questions for these both ladies. Yes, and I see that in our chat that we have the questions about the link, and also Beatrice and Chiara is also to put the answer in the chat. But anyway, yes.
May I answer one question that is coming in the chat right now? I think is addressed to me about the availability of the data and if they cover the Central Asia or Europe only. Thank you, Alexei. So, so I have presented a set of basic raw data or basic climate data like reanalysis, seasonal forecast. Those are available at a global scale, so they include the Central Asia. For the specific energy data sets that I have put in the chat, you find them available for Europe only today, but we are extending this service to include the globe. So the information will be available over the globe quite soon. Quite soon, maybe, okay, the next couple of years.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we are absolutely in our schedule, and we have this now the end of the first session.
And just Alexei, there is a question from Chiara say Copernicus system is free of charge.
Oh, yes,
it's completely open, free of charge. Anybody can, from anywhere in the world, may go and download the products, having access to everything, quality assessment, but also user support.
Yes, okay, and maybe the last question in this session, but anyway, if you will have these questions, the participants, you will type it in chat, and maybe we'll have this chance also to answer on this all of your questions in the end of today's sessions. Yes. Okay, if not, it's great. Thanks for our first speakers. And now we can go on with the next our session, and I will give the floor. It's Anahit Hovsepian. Yes, she is the scientific officer in Regional Climate Prediction Services Division of Service Department at the World Meteorological Organization since January 2014. Yes, and Anahit coordinates and facilitates WMO activities on implementation of climate services information system worldwide through improved access to authoritative climate information methods, tools, and systems at global, regional, and national levels, and strengthened user interaction through regional and national climate forums. Yes. Before joining WMO, Anahit worked at the Armenian State Hydrometeorological Service for more than 20 years, leading activities on climate services production and provision to various users. Anahit is also co-authors and authors of numerous peer-reviewed papers on international and national scientific journals and WMO publications. And with my pleasure, I will give the floor, and next chairs of the next session is Anahit Hovsepian. Please.
Thank you, Alexei. Спасибо, Алексей. Я переключусь на русский язык, чтобы облегчить также выступление участников, спикеров панельной сессии. И хочу всех поприветствовать сегодня на этом совещании. Наше панельное заседание посвящено вопросам метеорологического и климатического обслуживания для энергетического сектора национальными гидрометеорологическими службами. Я бы хотела приветствовать 5 спикеров. Мы пригласили представителей различных национальных гидрометеорологических служб из стран Центральной Азии, также экспертов из России и Хорватии. Каждого из них я буду представлять по ходу сессии. И я хочу пригласить спикеров выступить с короткими выступлениями, не более 5-6 минут, чтобы у нас было время для дискуссии, а также для ответов на вопросы. Наш первый спикер Алла Саханова. Алла окончила кафедру гидрометеорологии географического факультета Казахского национального университета имени Аль-Фараби. С 2008 года по настоящее время работает синоптиком в гидрометцентре Казгидромета, который находится в городе Нур-Султан. Алла прошла курсы по прогнозированию текущей погоды и метеорологическим радарам, также является экспертом в области вещания погоды для средств массовой информации, в том числе специальных телепроектов, связанных с прогнозом погоды по Казахстану. Алла, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Спасибо за представление, Нахид. Меня слышно, да?
Да, спасибо.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые организаторы и участники сегодняшнего онлайн-тренинга. В первую очередь хочу поблагодарить организаторов за предоставленную возможность выступить в тренинге. В своей презентации я кратко расскажу о том, как кратко расскажу о Казгидромете в первую очередь, затем как составляются прогнозы погоды и штормовые предупреждения, а также регулярное информирование наших потребителей. Так, следующий слайд. Так, на сегодняшний день Казгидромет – это крупное научно-производственное предприятие Министерства экологии, геологии и природных ресурсов Республики Казахстан. Имеет 15 филиалов в каждой области с общей численностью персонала более 3000 человек. Целью деятельности предприятия является получение достоверной гидрометеорологической информации, повышение качества гидрометеорологических и агрометеорологических прогнозов и информации о состоянии окружающей среды, сбор и обобщение данных, полученных при проведении систематических наблюдений на государственной наблюдательной сети. У нас насчитывается около 347 метеостанций, метеорологических станций, 377 гидрологических станций, 88 агрометеорологических станций, 9 аэрологических станций и 5 радиолокационных станций. При составлении прогнозов погоды синоптик анализирует данные наблюдательной сети, данные аэрологических станций, синоптические карты, также спутниковые снимки и численные прогнозы погоды. Основная продукция, выпускаемая Казгидрометом, это штормовые предупреждения по мере их возникновения, затем прогнозы погоды на 24-168 часов, прогноз погоды на 10 дней, на месяц и на сезон. Специализированные прогнозы, бюллетень суточного гидрометеорологического прогноза, бюллетень наводнения, ежедневный гидрологический бюллетень по рекам Казахстана, еженедельные бюллетени по Каспийскому морю, ежемесячный экологический бюллетень, агрометеорологический бюллетень, агрометеорологические прогнозы на 10 дней и ежегодные отчеты. Основными потребителями гидрометеорологической информации являются органы государственной власти, энергетика, сельское хозяйство, автомобильный транспорт, строительство, экология и туризм, население, СМИ. Также хотелось бы отметить, что Казгидромет не стоит на месте, постоянно улучшает и расширяет свой список услуг. Тем самым он разработал мобильное приложение AirKZ для мониторинга качества воздуха на территории Казахстана, также веб-приложение для фермеров, которое называется Агродата. Согласно указанию службы прогноза погоды РГП Казгидромет, если ожидается явление, которое будет достигать критериев опасного явления или стихийного бедствия, также при резких изменениях погоды мы выпускаем штормовое предупреждение. Затем отправляем его по электронной почте и факсу во все государственные органы, в первую очередь Министерство по чрезвычайным ситуациям. Казгидромет также тесно сотрудничает в зимнее время с Министерством образования по отмене занятий в школах и вузах. Согласно схеме передачи метеоданных, МЧС оповещает каждого жителя Казахстана посредством СМС-предупреждений с номера 112 о неблагоприятных погодных условиях на мобильные телефоны. В заключение хотелось бы сказать, что энергетический сектор получает от Казгидромета прогноз погоды на первые сутки и штормовые предупреждения об опасных природных явлениях. Также хотелось бы отметить, что Казгидромет всегда открыт для рассмотрения новых запросов от энергетического сектора по запросу и на постоянной основе. Также мы готовы укреплять и развивать существующие сотрудничества как на региональном, так и на международном уровне. У меня все. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое за интересное выступление, Алла. Надеюсь, у наших участников будут вопросы и комментарии по этому докладу. Пожалуйста, пишите их в чат. Также будете по ходу задавать вопросы другим спикерам. Ответы на них, конечно, будут в конце сессии. А теперь наш следующий спикер Елена Акентьева. Елена – ведущий научный сотрудник Главной геофизической обсерватории имени Воякова в Санкт-Петербурге. Она окончила географический факультет Санкт-Петербургского университета, кафедру метеорологии и климатологии. И более 40 лет работает в Главной геофизической обсерватории в отделе динамической метеорологии и климатологии. Область ее деятельности достаточно широка и включает оценку воздействия изменений климата на инфраструктуру, управление рисками, связанными с климатом, разработку соответствующих мер по адаптации и взаимодействию с конечными пользователями. Елена также является членом исследовательской группы по интегрированным энергетическим услугам Комиссии по обслуживанию Всемирной метеорологической организации. Елена, мы внимательно вас слушаем, пожалуйста.
Спасибо большое, Анаит. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Мне очень приятно встретиться с вами, хотя бы в таком виртуальном пространстве, так как, к сожалению, иначе нельзя. Со многими из вас я хорошо знакома, мы успешно работаем и сейчас, и работали раньше. Действительно, развитие климатического обслуживания энергетики в условиях меняющегося климата – это действительно очень актуальная тема. И при этом необходимо уделять внимание всем объектам и процессам в энергетическом секторе. В моем выступлении я хочу кратко остановиться на климатической информации для тепловых атомных станций и методом оценки рисков для их функционирования в условиях меняющегося климата с использованием программы «Климпакт», разработанной в МУ. Такое исследование было проведено в Главной геофизической обсерватории имени Воякова в Петербурге. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. На выработку энергии, на АЭС и ТЭС оказывает влияние комплекс климатических факторов, основными из которых являются тепловой и влажностный режимы, определяющие условия охлаждения энергоблоков. Современные и будущие изменения климата, понятно, что требуют пересмотра проектных характеристик. Это необходимо для безопасной и эффективной работы станций и для выявления районов с наиболее высоким риском для производства энергии на этих станциях. И вот на основе анализа нормативных документов и тесного взаимодействия с пользователями был отобран и рассчитан ряд показателей, отражающих изменения продолжительности и повторяемости волн тепла и засушливых периодов для 7 регионов с высокой плотностью АЭС и ТЭС на европейской территории России и на юге Западной Сибири. Пожалуйста, следующий слайд. Программа «Климпакт» использовалась для расчета следующих основных индексов. При этом за основу можно было брать ряды суточной температуры воздуха и осадков в теплый период года. Все эти характеристики, там у нас был больший набор, но вот я, так сказать, расскажу в основном об этих. Это максимальное количество последовательно сухих дней, продолжительность наиболее длинной волны тепла, рассчитанной соответствующими требованиями, и число периодов, когда были зарегистрированы волны тепла заданными характеристиками. Для каждого индекса были рассчитаны тренды, отображающие наблюдаемые изменения индексов и их значимость на разных процентах уровня доверия. Вот один из таких графиков показывает рост числа волн тепла в последние годы в Ростовском регионе. Значит, прогнозные значения таких индексов также были оценены к середине 21 века на основе использования региональной климатической модели ГГО. Эта модель охватывает как территорию России, но также и Каспийский регион, и Среднюю Азию. Дальше, пожалуйста. Таким образом, использование программы Климпакт и результатов регионального моделирования климата позволило выявить регионы с наибольшими климатическими рисками для АЭС и ТЭС. Вот здесь, в этой таблице, вы видите значения этих трех показателей, их изменения для рассматриваемых регионов. Жирным шрифтом выделены наиболее значимые изменения. Расчеты показали, что наиболее уязвимой к климатическим изменениям оказалась Ростовская область. Вот тут вот видно, что здесь отмечается наиболее статистически значимые, наблюдаемые и ожидаемое увеличение интенсивности и частоты периодов сильной жары и засушливых периодов. Представленный подход позволяет проверить соответствие климатических параметров проектным значением этих станций с тем, чтобы провести в дальнейшем соответствующую адаптацию. И кроме того, возможное снижение выработки энергии на АЭС и ТЭС в условиях меняющегося климата необходимо учитывать при планировании объектов энергетики в регионах с наибольшей климатической опасностью. И в таких областях особенно важно развитие возобновляемой энергетики. Спасибо. Спасибо большое. Пожалуйста, вопросы, если есть возможность.
Благодарю вас, Елена. Это было очень интересное выступление. Вы подняли важный вопрос об использовании климатических индексов, полученных с помощью инструмента Климпакт, разработанного экспертами комиссии по обслуживанию ВМО. Надеюсь, у наших участников будут вопросы или комментарии по поводу вашего выступления. И хотела бы напомнить, чтобы они присылали вопросы и комментарии в чат. Если возможно, также указали, кому адресован вопрос. Тем временем наш следующий спикер Наталья Василенко. Она окончила Кыргызский государственный национальный университет по специальности математика и с 2009 года работает в агентстве по гидрометеорологии при Министерстве чрезвычайных ситуаций Кыргызской республики. Она начинала синоптиком, но набралась опыта и в настоящее время является главным специалистом отдела метеорологических прогнозов. Наталья, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Здравствуйте, дорогие участники. Позвольте мне представить небольшую презентацию от Кыргызгидромета по основным темам. Краткая информация о Кыргызгидромете, метеорологические услуги, которые в настоящее время предоставляются для энергетического сектора, и на какую информацию существует спрос со стороны энергетического сектора. Можно поставить следующий слайд. Кыргызгидромет является специально уполномоченным государственным органом в области гидрометеорологической деятельности, основной задачей которого является обеспечение правительства, населения, различных секторов экономики, гидрометеорологической информации и информации о загрязнении природной среды. Также одной из задач является составление прогнозов погоды и предупреждений о стихийных и опасных гидрометеорологических явлениях и доведение их до населения и соответствующих государственных структур, таких как МЧС, правительство, министерство и ведомство. Можно перелистнуть слайд. Следующий, пожалуйста, слайд. Здесь вкратце о том, какие метеорологические услуги предоставляются именно для энергосектора. Кыргызгидромет обеспечивает отрасли энергетики метеорологическими прогнозами погоды и специализированной метеорологической информацией. В период отопительного сезона повышенный спрос имеет Информация о среднесуточной температуре воздуха. На основании договора на ежедневной основе требуемая информация предоставляется, а также составляются специализированные прогнозы об ожидаемых повышениях и понижениях среднесуточной температуры воздуха. Также мы выпускаем и распространяем посредством различных средств связи штормовые предупреждения об опасных метеорологических явлениях с заблаговременностью от 48 до 96 часов. Это особенно важно для электроэнергетики, так как опасные метеорологические явления являются одной из основных причин массового отключения электроснабжения и оказывают негативное влияние на работу линий электропередач и электростанций. Как раз-таки на текущем слайде предоставлена продукция, которая выпускается отделом метеопрогнозов Кыргызгидромета. Здесь предупреждение об опасных погодных явлениях, ежедневный бюллетень прогноза погоды на 7 суток и ориентировочный прогноз на 8 и 9 сутки. Выпускается прогноз уровня фонового загрязнения воздуха по городу Бишкек, прогноз погоды на месяц по областям Кыргызстана, обзоры гидрометусловий за прошедшие сутки, месяц, за год, и также предоставление специализированной метеорологической информации. На следующем слайде показаны наши сайты и приложения, где размещаются прогнозы погоды и штормовые предупреждения. Основной официальный сайт Кыргызгидромета GovMeteoKG, есть мобильное приложение MeteoKG, и для авторизованных пользователей есть сайт SRO Pastor для прогнозов именно по пастбищам. Ну и в заключение хочу сказать, что спрос на гидрометеорологическую продукцию с каждым днем только увеличивается. Особенно это актуально в энергетическом секторе, так как позволяет планировать эффективную деятельность и снизить энергозатраты и ущерб от опасных погодных явлений. В будущем мы, конечно же, продолжим сотрудничество с отраслями энергетики. Нам необходимо повышать качество предоставляемой продукции путем увеличения плотности наблюдательной сети, техническим оснащением, также привлечением высококвалифицированных специалистов. На этом у меня все. Большое спасибо за внимание.
Спасибо, Наталья. Было очень интересно узнать о деятельности Кыргызгидромета. Следующий докладчик Анваршо Даргаев из Таджикгидромета. Анваршо окончил Таджикский государственный национальный университет по специальности инженер-метеоролог. С 2004 года по настоящее время работает в агентстве по гидрометеорологии Республики Таджикистан. В настоящее время Анваршо является начальником отдела связи агентства по гидрометеорологии Республики Таджикистан. Он отвечает за контроль качества и мониторинг, управление данными, предоставляемыми через национальную гидрометеорологическую сеть. Он также отвечает за обслуживание сервера приема данных, где занимается контролем передачи данных и связью с региональным центром и основным центром ВМО, расположенным в городе Москва. Анваршо, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Я, Анваршо Даргаев, извиняюсь, что вместо своего заместителя Центра автоматизированной связи буду выступать. Сегодня я буду коротко рассказывать о том, что мы как с энергетическим сектором, какие информации обмениваемся, как их требования удовлетворяет, да? Так, я сейчас коротко буду рассказывать о том, что цели и задачи нашей Таджикгидромета. Таджикгидромет, агентство по гидрометеорологии, комитет охраны окружающей среды при правительстве Республики Таджикистан является единственной организацией, которая специализируется на прогнозировании погодных условий, гидрометеорологических наблюдениях, загрязнения окружающей среды и изменения климата и предоставлении современной информации о погоде. То есть мы, значит, тоже занимаемся как бы основной орган, который отвечает на прогноз погоды и то есть делаем прогноз для народа Таджикистана. Здесь слева, как вы видите, в карте указаны наши все эти гидрометеорологические карты, гидрометеорологические станции, которые расположены на карте. Можно следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Здесь я привел пример о том, что гидрометслужба у нас при правительстве Республики Таджикистан есть антимонопольная служба, то есть не служба, а организация, которые утвердили для нас перескуран. На основе этой перескуран мы, значит, информацию для некоторых министерств и ведомств отдаем на платном основе, на некоторые организации, значит, отдаем на бесплатном основе. Вот здесь в слайде приведено о том, что какие министерствах и комитетах мы отдаем все наши продукции, да, на платном основе. И государственные учреждения, и негосударственные учреждения. Значит, у нас в Таджикистане есть Министерство транспорта и Министерство энергетики и водных ресурсов. Для них мы общий прогноз даем на бесплатном основе. Но там есть, на следующем слайде буду рассказывать, там специальная информация есть, которую мы предоставляем им на платном основе. Можно, пожалуйста, следующий слайд? Вот здесь на левом картинке, как видите, это общий вид прогноз по областям разделено. Здесь мы потребителям информацию даем на бесплатном основе. В основном энергетический сектор Таджикистан от нас берет информацию, вот я на слайде предыдущий сказал, гидрометеорологическая информация специального назначения. У нас трех видов информации, значит, общего назначения, экстерного назначения и специального назначения. Из них наши гидроэнергетических, скажем, или Министерство энергетики водных ресурсов, они берут от нас прогноз общего характера и специального назначения берет. Мы им даем ежедневно тоже среднесуточная температура воздуха, потом там на зимний период запас снежного покрова информации на зимний период даем по их требованиям. Еще хочу отметить, что каждое начало года, ежегодно, да, мы с этим министерством заключаем договор о том, что постоянные информации они от нас получали. Мы эти информации отправляем по электронной почте и также распечатанном формате. Еще хочу отметить, что были вопросы со стороны этих энергетических секторов, да, о том, что почему в Таджикгидромете не проводится водоносы, да, наносы, которые приносят на водохранилище большой, скажем, проблемы, да. Мы в 2017 году в Таджикгидромете внедрились такие приборы, которые как мудномер. Они часто, вообще-то, этот гидрологический сектор, энергетический сектор таким вопросом, часто они задают вопросы, почему вы не делаете наносы? Наносы для них тоже важно, потому что мы горная страна, от нас вот берется вот эти, как формируется вода от Таджикистана и Кыргызстана. Вот, водные ресурсы очень влияют на низовые страны, да. Потом вот у нас внедрили в 2017 году вот такие приборы мудномер. Мудномер, только мы сейчас на основе этого мудномера ведем, делаем, то есть анализ наноса только на севере Таджикистана. Как вы знаете, вот двух бассейн рек, Сырдарья и Пянч, это попадает в Аральское море. Поэтому сейчас мы только вот внедрили в севере Таджикистан с прибором мудномера, вот начали делать вот анализ наноса. На других реках Таджикистана планируется на будущее вот внедрить. Спасибо огромное, потому что я приболела неделю назад. У меня с голосом тоже не очень так хорошо слышно вам. Спасибо огромное.
Спасибо вам большое, спасибо. Конечно, мы вас слышим хорошо, и было интересно узнать, какую информацию, как вы предоставляете услуги разным секторам, включая энергетический сектор, и какие меры принимаются для того, чтобы улучшить обслуживание.
Да, еще в моем отделе, я где работаю, да, я тоже обеспечиваю информацию в региональный центр город Ташкент и региональный центр ВМО город Москва. Тоже мы постоянно вот обеспечиваем информацию, да? Спасибо огромное.
Спасибо. Теперь мы подходим к концу презентации, и наш последний спикер Кристиан Хорват. Он является руководителем отдела метеорологических исследований и разработок Хорватской метеорологической и гидрологической службы. Кристиан курирует исследования в области численного прогнозирования погоды, приложений и климатологии, а также занимается специализированными метеорологическими и климатическими услугами для различных секторов экономики, в частности для энергетического сектора. Кристиан также работал над темами, связанными с энергетикой в Национальном центре атмосферных исследований в США и Национальной лаборатории устойчивой энергетики Датского технического университета. Кристиан также является членом исследовательской группы по интегрированным энергетическим услугам Комиссии по обслуживанию Всемирной метеорологической организации. Пожалуйста, Кристиан, вам слово.
Thank you very much, Anahit, and thanks to colleagues from WMO and WEMC for inviting me to be with you today. I will give you a short overview of the energy services we, as a rather small meteorological and hydrological service, are performing. First of all, I would like us to recognize the complexity of requirements and weather impacts to energy systems. Also, I would wish us to be aware of the key roles a small meteorological service, National Meteorological Service can take to support the energy sector, and then to recognize the value of the tailor-made weather and climate products. Next slide, please. To give you a background on the situation where we are, Croatia is a small country in the Mediterranean. This map shows our energy mix. We have nuclear, thermal, renewable, and hydropower installations, and most of it belongs to hydro power. In fact, the first hydropower plant in Croatia was opened only 2 days after the Niagara hydropower plant, being the second one in the world, and the city nearby was actually probably the first city in the world to be electrified with electric current. But today, renewable energy, I mean wind, solar, and biomass, are really growing a lot. The situation changes. You can see in 2010 we had 2% of renewables, in 2020 80%, and 2030 we plan to have 36% of wind, solar, and biomass. So things are rapidly changing, and the question is how to cope with that and what are the actual requirements to do NMHS. Next slide, please. General pillars, how we like to see them, there are 3 of them to support the energy sector. And one is support to national planning, to national authorities, etc. And then second is support to construction of individual energy facilities, such as critical infrastructure, and then tailor-made and climate information to support operations. What I want to stress out now is that while these are the general requirements, there is lots of information that could be gathered through communication with the energy sector and identify the bottom-up priorities. So we do hold regular meetings with Chamber of Commerce, with energy practitioners, with experts on an annual basis to get better information about the actual real needs. For example, just to give you an example of the need we would never think of meteorologists, is the, for example, forecast of the wind alarms over the hydro reservoir, because when there is strong wind, the water tends to pile up and make excessive loads to the power plant. So there are lots of requests such as this one. So local small-scale requests. Next slide, please. I advocate to policymakers always that the first thing to know about renewable energy is the resource of a single country, just like gas, drinking water, coal, whatever. A country should know how much resource it has in wind, solar, hydro, biomass, etc. So one of our main activities is resource estimates. You can see here for several elements. I want to emphasize that this is based on measurements, of course, but also increasingly on the modeling capacities. For example, wind and turbine height cannot be derived from measurements, but relies mostly on the high resolution modeling. So there is, the NMHS is really would benefit from investing into their modeling capacities. Next slide, please. The climate change is a hot topic, and we provide climate change projections or ensembles of projections, which are then used to estimate the climate change of water resource in certain catchments, which is needed for hydropower. We also work with cooling days and heating days and their changes in the future climate, what you can see on the left-hand slide. So this is information really absorbed by the energy sector. Next slide, please. One important aspect for the energy facilities is the safety in the design and construction. The effect of structures can be quite severe, and the meteorological effect. And we typically provide 50-year extremes, which are then served to construct and design the individual energy facilities. This is important, and this is a very challenging task because consequences to energy infrastructure can be severe. Next slide, please. Now, once we have built, we have planned and we have built our energy infrastructure, we need to manage it during operations. And the weather impacts to a power system are really extensive. The power system really depends on the very tiny balance between electricity demand, electricity generation, and also transmission that supports that. And you can see here a long range of meteorological variables needed for the energy management. These decisions are quite complex. They are usually time critical. And as our energy colleagues say, if it can go wrong, it will. So quality information on the energy operations is crucial. Next slide, please. I would please you to click next slide for the next 5 times to have the entire slide. And once more, please. Thank you very much. So the operational decisions are really very various. They use the past information, they use climatology, but also monthly seasonal forecasts, and they rely a lot on forecasts up to 10 days ahead. You can see here what is the impact, what is it used for, these forecasts, and they range from ancillary services to trading, discharging of reservoirs, maintenance of power plants, etc. Next slide, please. Now, once we produce all these forecasts, we work a lot with the energy practitioners to expose this information to them. And here again, their opinion is really crucial. We developed together the web applications for them. We developed the formats and the follow their needs to the final delivery of the service. I would like to give you a few examples of the value of these services in Croatia. For example, we have estimates by the Energy Institute in Croatia that inadequate planning of wind power plant maintenance costs around 50,000 euros daily for average wind power plant. Another estimate is that 1% improvement to wind power forecast, so only 1%, brings huge savings to balancing costs. I can say that these savings are on the order of 1% of the Croatian NMSH budget. So there is a huge need for quality information, not just any, but quality for continuous improvement of the services. Next slide, please. And to conclude, the accelerated uptake of renewables is really an opportunity for NMHACs to strengthen the collaboration between meteorology and energy. And NMHACs can really support the entire life cycle of energy transition from early planning to supporting operation. Finally, tailor-made products have an exceptional economic value, and we will be increasingly absorbed by the energy sector. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, Кристиан. Это было очень интересное, познавательное выступление. И, надеюсь, у наших участников будет много вопросов и комментариев по вашему выступлению. Я также хотела подчеркнуть важный вклад Елены и Кристиана в их качестве членов исследовательской группы по интегрированным энергетическим услугам комиссии по обслуживанию ВМО и их участие в организации этого учебного курса. Ваш вклад очень важен, и мы его очень ценим. Таким образом, на сегодняшней сессии мы вкратце ознакомились с деятельностью гидрометслужб Казахстана, Кыргызстана и Таджикистана, а также узнали об опыте коллег из России и Хорватии по предоставлению специализированной метеорологической и климатической продукции энергетическому сектору. И в частности о поддержке, оказываемой гидрометслужбой Хорватии для надлежащего использования возобновляемых источников энергии. Уважаемые участники, теперь мы перейдем к обсуждению со всеми нашими участниками дискуссии. И первый вопрос у нас от Азизы Баубековой Елене. Уважаемая Елена, что вы думаете о перспективе строительства АЭС на берегу озера Балхаш и климатических рисках в данном регионе? Лена, пожалуйста, могли бы ответить?
Спасибо, я письменно уже ответила, но дело в том, что это такая глобальная, так сказать, проблема, для исследования которой нужно провести очень подробные исследования климатических факторов, гидрологических факторов, а также экологической обстановки и, так сказать, экономики данного региона с точки зрения необходимости такого шага. То есть это, без сомнения, очень сложное глобальное исследование должно быть проведено. И, естественно, вот так вот сразу я ответить на этот вопрос не берусь, извините. Но, допустим, совместно вот с коллегами можно, так сказать, подумать на эту тему. Но, без сомнения, это, так сказать, глобальная задача, и быстрых шагов тут делать никак нельзя. Спасибо.
Да, спасибо. Спасибо за пояснение, Елена. Еще один вопрос от Азизы Баубековой Натальи. Вопрос, за какой период гидрологические прогнозы, используемые для планирования строительства ГЭС, и занимаетесь ли вы мониторингом ледников? Наталья, пожалуйста.
Что касается на первый вопрос, я не являюсь экспертом в области гидрологических прогнозов, я больше как синоптик работаю. У нас в Кыргызгидромете есть отдел гидрологии, они выпускают краткосрочные прогнозы заблаговременностью 5-10 дней, выпускают долгосрочные прогнозы на период вегетации, также штормовые предупреждения о селях, об опасностях сели и паводков. Вот. По поводу ледников могу сказать, что у нас в настоящее время Кыргызгидромет ведет снеголовинный мониторинг на 4 станциях снеголовинных и принимает участие в экспедиционных исследованиях и мониторинге на ледниках при поддержке международных партнеров.
Спасибо, спасибо, Наталья. Мне подсказать, что Марат Каратаев также хотел выступить устно с вопросом, он поднял руку. Пожалуйста, Марат Каратаев.
Да, Анна, спасибо большое за возможность задать вопрос, и я очень благодарен спикерам, которые сегодня выступали из Казахстана, Кыргызстана, Хорватии. Но у меня вот есть такой вопрос один. Я вообще работаю над тем, чтобы, ну вот, допустим, один из вопросов моего исследования, это касается, как изменение климата повлияет на сельскохозяйственный сектор в Казахстане. Это первый вопрос. А второй, это область моего исследования, да, и второй область моего исследования, допустим, как энергетическая политика Казахстана повлияет на water available resources,
Наличие водных ресурсов.
Да, на наличие водных ресурсов. Но, в общем, что я хочу сказать, что во время этого исследования, да, когда я требовал какие-то данные с Казгидромета, то это все было предоставлено в бумажной форме, не в диджитал. В бумажной форме. Это первое, да. А второе, что эта информация, которую вы берете из Казгидромета, она была предоставлена на платной основе. То есть мне приходилось еще платить за эту информацию. И третий аспект, да, что некоторая информация была засекречена. Вот я хотел бы спросить, поскольку мы сегодня, этот воркшоп, он направлен на то, мы обсуждаем, вот мне очень понравился опыт Хорватии, мы обсуждаем на то, чтобы данные должны быть открыты для того, что мы должны там внедрять какую-то энергетическую политику, политику в области водных ресурсов, политику в области изменения климата. Но доступ к этим данным, он чуть-чуть вот такой вот сложноватый. И я вот хотел бы спросить, вот какая политика и менеджмент в странах, вот в Кыргызстане и Казахстане по доступу к этой информации? На сегодняшний день это очень сложно, так как я сказал, что это, во-первых, это в бумажной форме, во-вторых, это на платной основе, в-третьих, это не всегда открытая информация. Спасибо.
Спасибо, Марат, за очень важный вопрос. Вы затронули, это не только важно, но и такой немножко с подковыркой. И я бы хотела попросить наших коллег из Казахстана и Кыргызстана ответить на этот вопрос. Але и Наталья, пожалуйста, не могли бы вы прокомментировать? Я понимаю, вопрос, может быть, у вас не будет...
Это очень важный вопрос, потому что все мировое сообщество борется с проблемой изменения климата, но в то же время вот какие-то исходные данные, они недоступны в таком полном режиме.
Ну, может, я попробую немножко ответить. Конечно, я тоже как бы затрудняюсь полный ответ дать. Но мы предоставляем информацию на основании договоров, вот именно что касается метеорологической информации, данных разных. Ну, потому что, в принципе, у нас, знаете, ведется архив, да, данных, сбор, и, в общем, чтобы вам предоставить эти данные, это тоже должна быть проведена какая-то работа, чтобы вам их предоставить. Может быть, поэтому введена такая оплата за предоставление этих данных. Ну, я не знаю, может так.
Спасибо, Наталья. Я вижу...
Anna, sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask also experience of Horvatia, Croatia? So how it works in Croatia, data availability?
Марат, простите, Алла тоже подняла руку, чтобы ответить. Давайте ее послушаем, потом послушаем опыт Хорватии.
Добрый день еще раз. РГПК «Гидромет». На сегодняшний день, согласно последним изменениям, у нас принят экологический кодекс Казахстана. Поэтому, если данные раньше предоставлялись на платной основе, то большая часть сейчас дается на бесплатной основе. Вам нужно его открыть, посмотреть, в какой перечень входит ваша информация, обратиться в Казгидромет и ожидать ответа. Второе. Согласно второго вопроса, вы говорили про бумажные носители. В Казгидромете принято движение, что в ближайшие пятилетки у нас большая часть работы идет в цифровом формате. Часть информации уже перенесена. И согласно нашему плану, если ваша информация, которую вы запрашиваете, уже доступна в электронном, то мы ее сможем предоставить. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое. Я думаю, это хорошие новости для коллег из соседних стран, в частности для Марата. Марат, вы хотели также услышать мнение нашего коллеги из Хорватии, Кристиана. Кристиан, пожалуйста, не могли бы вы поделиться опытом политики обмена данными в Хорватии?
Data sharing, data exchange, how it works in Croatia and in European Union.
Thank you. Well, I can say from experience that the data policy issue is a very complex issue for NMHSs also in Europe. And there are a lot of things happening right now with the WMO policy, a new policy in October, which Hamid just wrote in chat, so you can refer to it, with the European Commission pushing for the free and unrestricted access to high value data sets. So data sets which every National Meteorological Service would provide for free, including the observations data, the climate data, the weather forecast data, the warnings data, etc. So with that said, still a service like the Croatian Met Service has a certain percentage, around 15% of income from the commercial activities. And we are negotiating with our ministry to give us a push in a stronger push in open data policy. We also have to recognize that sometimes we have manipulative costs for the data, which is a little bit more complex, like weather forecast data, which depends not only on the large IT infrastructure in terms of HPC, high performance computing, but also on the archiving on disk and other archiving systems. So the thing is not uniform with the data policy in Croatia, but there is a strong, a lot of data is available on our website. Real-time data is practically all available, but sometimes some derived products or longer-term data sets are still not fully open, which we expect to be in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Christian, thank you for your answer. Just a question for a few seconds. Is it free data, or I need to have to pay for this data?
Yeah, you can find on our website, for example, the XML data of observations, weather forecasts, climate projections. You can find for free. Hydrological stations, they're all free. So this is real-time data, which is free. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Марат, за ваши вопросы и за все ответы, которые были предоставлены довольно-таки детально. И я также хочу опять обратить ваше внимание на ссылку, которую мой коллега Хамид Пастани послал в чат. Это новая политика ВМО, это называется WMO Unified Data Policy Resolution, которая призывает страны к более открытому и неограниченному обмену данными. И я думаю, конечно, понадобится время странам, потому что это стратегические вопросы, и эти решения должны быть приниматься на правительственном уровне, но я думаю, со временем вот будет значительное улучшение в вопросе обмена данными, которые являются критическим условием для предоставления лучшего обслуживания. Последний вопрос. И я вижу, Елена ответила на вопрос, был в чате по строительству атомной энергостанции. Я думаю, вопрос исчерпан. И если больше нет вопросов, я бы хотела завершить эту сессию. И хотела бы опять поблагодарить всех участников, всех наших спикеров за очень интересные доклады, и также всех участников семинара за активное участие и интерес. На этом первая половина второго дня семинара завершена. Сейчас у нас будет перерыв, во время которого помимо чашки кофе или чая вы можете продолжить общение в чате и продолжить задавать вопросы нашим спикерам. И мы вернемся обратно ровно в 17:30 по алматинскому времени. Спасибо большое еще раз. И всего доброго.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back from the break. I hope you had a bit of a rest and particularly enjoyed the music that was running. It's a very nice soundtrack that the team here made it for you, or rather found it for you. But yeah, we're ready for the last session, the last kind of part of the day. So what we're going to do now, we're going to present the practical exercise. So I said at the beginning on Monday that this is a very important part of the course, because while we are learning, this is a practical training course. So it's not just learning, it's to put into practice what you are learning. And importantly, also interact with each other, hopefully create bonds, and perhaps also create some collaboration for the future. Ideally, also this would be done as a mix of meteorologists and energy experts. At the moment, I'm not across the mix, how many people from meteorology and how many people from energy. So if we do a quick check, we have about 50 people in attendance. You know, you can use reactions at the bottom. So if you are from more on the meteorology side, can you please show one of the symbols, maybe raise your hand so it stays up a bit, and then we take it down. Can we see how many people are from the meteorology side? Raising your hand. So if you look at the symbol, raise your hand. And if you also want to switch on your camera just momentarily while we go on to the slides, we can see each other, just to say hi. And then in a few minutes, we can switch it off. That's great. Thank you for turning it on. So I cannot believe though that there is only 5 people, 6 from meteorology. There must be many more. So maybe we repeat the question. So if you are from the meteorology side, can you go to reactions at the bottom of Zoom and click on raise hand? We get one more hand. Okay, so let's try the other way. There could be more options, but let's see. So we have here 6, 7, about 10 from meteorology. If we try that now, if we take this hands down, please, and let people from more the energy side raise their hands. Let's see how many people we have now. Please take your hand down from meteorology and allow people from energy to come in. Okay, so we still have a number of unaccounted experts. I won't go through all the fields available, but if you can type on the chat, if you haven't raised your hand because you're not in meteorology or energy, can you type on the chat how you describe yourself? What field is closest to you? And type it there, possibly in English if you could. Otherwise, we run some kind of translation. Okay, atmospheric aerosols, climate change, that I would have said that's meteorology. So with the meteorology, we are intending weather and climate. So maybe it wasn't clear, sorry. So weather and climate on one side, let's say energy on the other side, and then there could be people working in between, there could be other specialists. Okay, hydrology, climate change, again, more on the meteorology side. Okay, that's good. So let's get going, and thank you for those who have turned on the camera. Feel free to turn it off if you wish. So what we're going to do now is to explain a little bit how the practical exercise is going to run over, not today. Today is explanation with question and answer. So we are clear what we're going to do from next time. The first session is going to be on Friday, but I'll tell you more in a minute. If we can share the slides, please. Okay. Thank you. So I want so the practical session breakout groups, like first of all, it's not written here, but it was emphasized at the beginning and also on the abstracts and the summary of the training course when you registered, that one of the key targets of this training is to contribute to the writing and the planning and writing of a mini proposal. So it's obviously with the time available, we cannot do much, but we should be able to put the seeds of mini proposals, one mini proposal per group. We're going to have 4 groups and about 8 to 10 participants, I think, for each group. We'll need to do the counts. The groups will limit the number of groups to 4. also because we need mentors. We have mentors that will facilitate the discussion, particularly during the first session on Friday. And then hopefully you are acquainted with what needs to be done. And so you can do things yourself after that, mostly, but we will be around to ask, answer questions. So the participants will discuss about the development of a specific weather and or climate service for the energy sector. So, and this, as I said, will be done in the context of preparing a mini proposal. Think about something that you can then take after the training course and develop further and possibly submit to a funding body like the Green Climate Fund, for instance. This is actually what we did on previous occasions, and with some people we then continued the collaboration and prepared some of the work for a proposal for the Green Climate Fund and then other funding. So something very good could come out of this. It's really up to you how much effort you put, how much interest you have, and so on. So I encourage you to put as much energy as you can in this exercise, because it's not just something that is useful for this training course. As I said, it can be useful for the future. So during the first breakout group, on Friday, participants will need to have selected a specific service to be developed as a team. So on Friday, you will start discussion amongst the team, but my recommendation is that you start to be really focused on what you need to achieve and decide the topic of your mini proposal with a few bullet points already defined. All the service proposals will be presented during the session 6, which is next Friday. So Friday next week, 4th of March, last day of the training, between 10 and 11 UTC. This is what we call elevator pitch. It's going to be a short presentation from each of the 4 groups. And this will be evaluated by a panel. A panel of judges. Preparation of the proposals, as I said, there's not very much time. If you count the time available during the training course, is only basically 3 hours. It's really limited, and that's why I said during the first session you want to be able to already focus on the topic and have a bit of a structure. So this is the coming Friday. However, if you want to do a better job of the proposal, nothing is stopping you from meeting outside of this 3 hours, and you can agree with your group how you want to do it. There are many ways to do it. You're free to do it, but we can provide support if needed. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we give you some guidelines. I mean, you're free to develop the proposal the way you wish. I don't know your starting position, whether you are an experienced project planner or project coordinator or so on. So maybe you already have your tools and you can disregard this. Here we give you some pointers to help you in case you want to use them. And so here we describe basically the main items you want to come up with. So if anything, the proposal that you will describe at the end on the last day, it will have this bullet points with a paragraph for each of them. And I'll show you an example also later. So description of what you're going to do, objectives, so what you want to, the problem that you're trying to solve. So that's where you want to start. You can put objective first, you can change the order if you wish, but objective obviously is what you want to discuss first. It's the problem you are trying to solve, whether it's reducing the error in the forecast you provide to a wind farm operator, or the an improved assessment of solar power production, or any of those things. It could be any sector in energy, but the key thing here is to identify the problem you want to solve. So that needs to be very clear when you present your result, your mini proposal. And then you have the benefits of what you're doing, outputs, what you would be producing. Of course, you're not producing, but what you would be producing with your mini service, and activities that needs to be done in order to achieve the output. And also what inputs. So we heard before about the need of having good data and so on. So, what kind of data do you need, where you're going to get the data from, and so on. So these are the inputs. And finally, who are you going to work with? Is it by yourself, or are you going to put together 2 or 3 Met services and an energy company, or whatever you think is appropriate for the project to be successful? Next slide, please. So, as I said, the objective is to build a draft plan of the selected weather and climate service. So this mini proposal, we call it service of mini proposal, for a mini proposal for a weather and climate service for energy, basically, just to re-emphasize that. And this also the objective, like I said before, of the practical sessions is to enhance discussion and understanding across all participants of a specific topic that we're discussing in each group, and explain how this effort to deploy weather and climate service will create value. So again, related to the objective, once you clarify the objective, you can then also justify that on the basis of the added value that the service you're developing would produce once finished. So this is just, again, a suggestion for how you can structure your first meeting. So you have 60 minutes on Friday, and again, feel free to disregard if you wish, but just some indication. So you could spend 5-8 minutes of the hour with each person to draw their own weather and climate service. Draw could be sketches, could be anything, just words and so on. So you get your own time. Probably you want to introduce each other first, in the breakout group. So you just do a quick round, but within 5 minutes, very quick. Then 5-8 minutes to just let everybody, this is to let everybody individually to think about their own kind of problem. And then because we want to be able to allow everybody to bring in their own ideas and not be drawn in by someone that maybe has got stronger opinion or stronger ideas. If you don't have any, that's fine. Others hopefully will, and then you can join in the conversation later. But if you have some ideas, it could be good to do that, and then present it in the next 10 minutes, share your thoughts. I know it's really tight. It's very optimistic, this timing, but if you can stick to that as close as possible, that probably be helpful for you. And then together as a group, you can start to build a diagram of how this weather and climate service could look like. As I said, starting maybe from the middle is your objective, and then see what the other aspects are going to look like, and then summarize to share with a larger group. We'll try to, maybe not the first time, we'll see whether actually this given the limited amount of time, we may skip this part of sharing with other larger group. This is what we've done in the past. Probably we had a bit more time actually, so we'll see how it goes. If there is an opportunity, it's good to share. So, you know, also cross-fertilization between groups is useful. Otherwise, you just keep going, and then you'll present it on the last day. Next slide, please. Again, I won't go through all these questions. These are questions that can help you. Again, guidelines. There's no, you know, there's no formal instructions. It's nothing that you really need to follow word by word. It's for you to read. It's also in the document that all this information is in the document that was circulated before the training. So hopefully you will have read that. It's also in Russian, so you can choose the version you prefer. So I'll skip this. I'll let you read all the questions that can help you frame the mini proposal, and we go to the next slide. And again, this is as before, some of the pointers, what is needed in your service or system, so measurements, models, engineered systems, actionable output communication. So there's again some some ideas, some pointers, and like I said, this is a group report outs. If we end up doing the report in plenary, which as I said, I doubt we'll do, but otherwise it's also good to keep these points in mind, because towards the end of the hour, when maybe there's 5-10 minutes left, you can go through these points and make sure that you cover them. And that will help you for the discussion in the next session. So to prepare for the discussion in the following session. Okay, next slide, please. Right, and here, again, I won't go into the details, but in the document that was circulated, you will find a few examples. These are actually taken from a WMO document that was published a few years ago. Roberta mentioned that earlier today. It's called Energy Exemplar. The link is available on the document that was circulated. Here, I only picked the first example, just to show you. If you look on the left, you will recognize the names of the points, the items that we recommend you follow when you put together the mini proposal. So description, objective, benefits, outputs. And here is what I mentioned with the paragraph. So you don't need to do much more than this. But in order to get here, you probably find that you need quite a lot of discussion. So although it looks simple here, there are not many words. To agree on the words is probably going to take you quite a bit of time. So that's why you need to focus particularly on this objective. Like in this case, is to provide energy site developers with data and tools to assist with initial estimates of potentially viable energy production sites. So this particular example is around the identification and resource assessment. And then you have other categories of energy in the other. So this is what we call focus area 1 in the document, and there are other 4 focus areas with examples, similar examples. This is pretty high level, and you can stay at this level if you wish, or go a bit more in detail, which will be good in your mini proposal. It should be a bit more specific. Here we kept it very generic because it can be adapted to various situations. but your mini proposal, I recommend is should be a bit more specific. Okay, next slide is the other part of this. So it's just a continuation. So we'll skip that. You can then read it in the document. And next slide. You've seen this a couple of times already. So just to remind you that, yes, you need to focus on the objective and what problem you're trying to solve. But in order to do that, the first step is to understand the needs and solution. So I don't know what the composition of the groups is going to be. So I don't know whether there is actually going to be energy people in your group. I hope there will be. And if so, I suggest that you first interrogate, or as a second step or soon in the process, interrogate and ask people from the energy sector what they think their main problem is, and then try to address that. So that's the first step. And then here is an actual implementation of a service. So it's not how you produce the proposal, but it can help you to see how an actual implementation works, and these are the steps you can keep in mind when you plan your mini proposal. Okay, next slide, sorry. Yeah, so sorry, before it was 8 people, it could be 8, 10 people per groups, around that number. There's no, fixed right or wrong number, but we don't want to have too many or too few. So around 8, 10 people, between 6 and 10 is fine. And we think that with the people available on the training course, we can form 4 breakout groups. And as I said, we will form 4 breakout groups. So we don't know how many people are going to be in each group, but around this number anyway. A mentor will be assigned to your group. Also, I recommend that each group assigns themselves a coordinator, because the mentor is not always going to be there. And it's useful for one of you to, or more, you can rotate, whatever you want to, however you want to organize yourself. I recommend you select someone who at least takes notes, because obviously you need something in writing to present at the end. So make sure that someone is taking notes. And if you have maybe someone to coordinate as well, could be the same person taking notes, but normally it's a different person. So 2 people, 1 coordinating, 1 taking notes, let's say. Okay, and then like I said before, because the time is limited during the training course, you can explore other ways to communicate outside of that time. Maybe you want to create a Word or a PowerPoint document and upload it on Google Drive or whichever kind of shareable place you decide. And so everybody can, I actually recommend doing this straight away, so you can when you start to sketch things and take notes and things, everybody can contribute and see what's going on. And you can also use chats like Slack, WhatsApp, and whatever to communicate with. I mean, during the training course, of course, there is a chat from Zoom, so that's probably the easiest thing. But yeah, we're not prescriptive. You don't need to meet after the training, but if you do, as I said, we are happy to help with what we can, but it's ultimately down to you and your willingness to excel in this task. Right, so like I said, there are only 3 hours. So session 3, session 4, session 5, just note timing slightly different from the first one, and then second and third are the same. And then the final presentation on session 6 on the 4th of March. between 10 and 11. And I think that concludes my presentation, and we'll now take some questions. Next slide, I think, is the last one. Yeah. Questions, yes. Maybe, yeah, if you can leave it to the previous slide so people can have the sessions. Yeah, thank you. Okay, do we have any questions? All clear. Actually, if everything, oh yeah, well, I don't know if we are ready. The other thing we can try to accommodate. So the groups will be formed between now and next time. We could try to accommodate some of your preferences if you want to give us people you want to work with, particularly if you can help us mix people from weather and climate on one side and energy on the other side. If we can combine the two expertise, then we'd be happy to put you in the same group. So everything was clear, yeah? So everybody's going to finish the proposal in 3 hours because you have all you need, and then give a great presentation on the 4th of March, session 6.
Sorry, Roberto, someone was mentioning a document you shared. I'm passing the questions to your personal chat.
Okay, yeah, so I don't see the... Yeah, so I don't know if we can put the link somewhere. I don't know if there is a, yeah, it should be on SharePoint, the document. But Dinara, could you also send the document again to everybody, the English and
yes,
English
okay.
and Russian version, please?
I think there was a question in Zoom chat. The question is, do they form the breakout, the groups on their own, or do we actually assign them to?
Yes, yeah, thanks. Yeah, as I was saying, we will prepare the working groups. We will assign people to groups, but what we're going to do, we're happy to take your suggestions, particularly if you can tell us if you find people with expertise in weather and climate and energy, so we can mix people this way. That will help the group. So if you can send suggestions to Dinara today, and then tomorrow we'll form the groups. And when the session on Friday, 25th of February comes, you will be already, your name will be in the system, and you will have to just select the room number, the breakout room from the system here. So if you don't tell us anything, then on Friday, you will find that your name should be assigned to a specific room, and then you just click on the room number and you go in and you find your collaborators in the room, and you can discuss there with them. At that stage, it won't be possible to change the group because, again, there's very little time, and so we need to be a bit pragmatic around how we form the groups. So there's some questions here in Russian, so I don't know if I need to answer them. No, technical support.
They are sharing their emails, Albert.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
So actually there was a reply in the Zoom chat that from Svetlana, they will discuss and they will write to my email about the group suggestions.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, also, yeah, that reminds me that as far as we can see, there are, I don't know how many cases, but in one, at least one case, we noticed that there are more than one person sitting under the same name on Zoom. So they are in the same room, physical room, and sharing the account here. So I don't know whether in that case people will be able to split, or they have to stay in the same room, in which case obviously they will be part of the same group. And if you can tell us, please, what your situation is, whether you are working with colleagues there and you cannot do otherwise. I don't know if we can reach out particularly to those people in more than one in the same room. And yes, there is a question about the language, which I glossed over. It's an important point because, yeah, what we want to do is to have groups working in the same language. So the training course was planned to be for Russian speakers mainly. And so we are going to give priority to Russian speaking experts from Central Asia. And of course, we'll obviously want to avoid mixing people who don't speak Russian with people who cannot speak English. So if you can also send us an email saying to Dinara saying that you prefer to be in an English speaking group, then we'll form a group only for people speaking English. That will also help us with the mentors, because we have assigned and found some experts that have kindly agreed to be mentors, also on the basis that they speak Russian and so and English, so they can help with the conversation. Okay, so there's some, so the translation, there's a translation that came across here to make it more convenient to work for organizations. Yeah, of course, I mean, I'm not entirely sure what this is referring to, but like I said, please, the best thing you can do is to be proactive and send an email to Dinara saying what your requirements are, whether you want to work with specific people, whether, you know, what language you're speaking, and any specific requirement we'll try to accommodate, but they have to come by tomorrow morning at the latest. So be very quick, because obviously we're going to need to spend some time to form the groups before Friday. Yeah, there's a comment about dividing specialists and experts in multidisciplinary disciplines. So that what we're trying to achieve, like I said, is to have a multidisciplinary group. So we don't, hopefully we won't end up with a group with only weather and climate experts, another one only energy. So we, or if we have social scientists, even better. So yeah, we want to have a good mix of expertise. Okay, I don't know if I'm missing some of the questions. There is a bunch of questions, some in Russian, some translated. Okay, so we actually, so if we finish up now, we got 20 minutes left that were scheduled for this session. So in this 20 minutes, if it'd be very useful if you could use this 20 minutes to write the emails we discussed to Dinara, so we get the information as soon as possible, or at least discuss with your friends and colleagues, and send us the information as soon as possible. So I don't see any other questions coming up here. Don't know, Dinara, Beatrice, anything more, or we can wrap up?
I don't see it. I translated all of them, and I think you addressed them already. Now they are sharing their emails.
Excellent. Are you getting any more, Dinara? I can see some emails here. I don't know exactly.
Yes, yeah, I do see them. I'm collecting them.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the purpose of typing the email here is, but hopefully you know.
I guess I will just send the email to the indicated addresses and yeah, ask them to give information about their expertise.
Okay.
That's what
very
I
good.
do.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So that's it. Thank you again for your participation today, and I want to also thank all the speakers. It's been a great session. I think we learned a lot. We still have a lot of interesting lectures and discussions coming up over the next 4 sessions. But yeah, today it was great to learn, also particularly from the national med services from the region, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and also the Croatian med service. So thank you all, and of course WMO and C3S earlier. Thank you very much again, and we'll see you on Friday.